I had to get this on camera because, wow, look at the sawdust that's in here. Okay, crap. Look at that. Wow, and a bunch fell out too. You gotta be a little bit more diligent about dumping this thing. On the last video, I talked briefly about my wooden tripod. I got it finished now, and I'm completely happy with the leg set. I am not 100% happy with the head. I like the design, and in theory, it should work great, but what I'm finding is that it's a little bit stiff here. Even though I loosen this up all the way, it doesn't rotate freely. Now, I'm going to fix that, of course, with some wax or grease in there to make that go smoothly. But the other issue I have is the way that the camera mounts. I made this tapered dovetail mount here with a little toggle on the end. And the way this works is it's got this captured 1/4-20 screw in here that will screw into the bottom of the camera, like so, like a normal anything would do. You tighten that down, and then you slip it in, and then you have to lock it. But the problem is it's very difficult to reach this toggle to swing it down, and then I'm not really happy the way it works here. Also, the whole thing looks kind of small on top of this. I really should have made it bigger to make it a little bit more robust. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to make a new head for this tripod. Okay, another thing that I did was I used weak plywood. I used cheap plywood to build that one. I really want to make this new one out of the best plywood that I possibly can. So I've got some 3/4 inch Baltic birch here. I've got some 1/2 inch Baltic birch there. That'll make all the parts. I don't need much. I'm just going to cut 6 inches off the end of this roughly with my battery saw, and then cut the rest on the table saw. And it'll be basically the same for the 1/2 inch plywood. I don't need very much of that either. Well, the first piece that I need is the base, and that's going to be made from 1/2 inch plywood. It's 3 inches wide and 3 3/8 inches long. I need to drill a counterbore and a hole for a carriage bolt to fix it on top of the tripod. I want to glue this bolt in so it doesn't turn afterwards, so I'm going to mix up a little bit of epoxy. Now I'm going to cut a piece of 3/4 inch plywood the same size as the base, and then glue it right onto the base using wood glue. Alright, let's look at the original again. On this one I used plywood as the pivot point for going up and down, and it's a little bit, I don't know, sticky. So on the new one I'm going to be using 2-inch ABS pipe, and that'll go right through, and that'll act as the pivot point. I figure this will be lower friction, smoother motion. So I'm just going to square out the end on the miter saw and then cut it to length, which is 4.5 inches. Now the glue is dried on the base plus the part I glued on, and what I need to do now is I need to draw the semicircular outline in this so that I can cut it out on the bandsaw. Now at the spindle sander, I'm going to refine that curve so that the pipe fits in there exactly. Now all I need to do is attach the cradle, you could say, or the base to the pipe. And I'm just going to use a couple of 1-inch screws, drill pilot holes and drive them in. After that, I'll take it apart again and put some epoxy in there and put it back together. Next I need to make the side parts here that go around the pivot point. And on the original they're 1/2 inch plywood. On the new one I want to make them from 3/4 inch plywood. I'll cut them to width at 3 3/8 inches. Mark the center to draw the area that I need to cut out. Also the outer arc along the bottom. Then bring it to the drill press and drill out the majority of the material in the hole with a 1 1/4 inch drill bit. I've got the basic shape cut out here on both parts. I need to refine the curve on the outside, and I also need to make sure that I've got a good fit on the inside for this pipe on a spindle sander. Okay, I've got them both fitting really well. I want them to be snug, but not overly tight. This feels pretty good right here. The other one is just a little bit looser, but this one I'm going to cut so it acts as a clamp anyway. I talked about my spindle sander before. Another thing that bothers me about it is that the drum keeps riding up because the rubber sleeve thing, or the actual drum part, are too small. I guess they shrunk even before I bought it. Every single one of them are too skinny for these sleeves. The sleeves fit really slack on here. These are aftermarket sleeves. These are the originals. The originals are actually even looser. I wrap tape around it, but I'm going to try something else. I'm going to actually try to swell this rubber up a little bit with lacquer thinner fumes. Alright, I've got the dog dish here, and I made a little bit of a holder to keep the roller up out of the lacquer thinner. I'm going to put it in there, and I'm going to cover the whole thing with a piece of OSB to keep it from evaporating too rapidly. And then put it somewhere out of the way so that it'll have time to see if it'll work. This is as far as I'm going to go with it in this video. I'll finish it off tomorrow, and there'll be another video in a couple of days. You can see I have made caps to go in the ends to close that off. Looking at the original, you can see it's quite a bit bigger. All I got left to do is to make the top with the quick release, which is going to be quite a bit different on this one, quite a bit simpler. Okay, before I go, I should check the thing, see if it's actually working. Wipe off the stuff is wicking up through the wood. Let's see. No, it's not there yet, but it's only been about an hour, so I figure if I leave it overnight, that'll be a fair test. Let's see. I get the legs taken apart and brought out here onto my work table, and I'm going to give them a coat of water-based urethane. I'm going to spray it on. It'll be a thin coat, and then I'll sand it lightly, and then another coat, and that should protect it and keep it new looking.